All right. Good Monday morning or Monday afternoon, everybody here in Boston. This is John Barrows of Make It Happen Monday, and I am super excited to be talking with one of my favorite people and good friends at the same time, Mr. Doug Landis. Hey, Doug, how you doing today?
What's happening, Johnny? Nice to see you on this Monday morning, and it is morning our time
Yes, it is.
here on the West Coast, the West Coast.
Yeah, we'll debate that. We'll see what happens. But for those of you who don't know Doug, actually, Doug and I have become way more friends, personal friends than business friends. But Doug has been a very strong catalyst for my career, if you will. So just for some context here, when I was at Barrows selling Barrows, we went into Salesforce when Doug was working there to run all the onboarding. Sent one of our why you now emails all the way up to the top, got it down to Doug, did a little pilot with Doug evaluating things. And then I think wasn't our first trip Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, Tokyo,
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. That was
we had the good fortune of traveling the world together to espouse this why you now tactic to all of our reps around the world. And good Lord, I tell you what, traveling globally with Mr. John Barrows we had some fun.
Yes, we did. Yes.
We'll keep it above board here.
Yeah, we totally will. And for those of you who have been following me on Snapchat, you've seen some of the pictures of our Halloween party over at in Vegas, which Doug and I were enjoying quite a bit. But that's a whole other podcast. But anyways, just for everybody else's background, Doug, give them a little bit of context on where you're coming from and what you're doing now with Emergence, because today's talk is going to be about the investment world and new ideas and starting businesses and stuff like that and leadership. So how'd you get to where you are? Just a little background here.
Sure. So as John mentioned, I spent good 5 years at Salesforce running sales productivity and enablement over there. Left Salesforce. Previous to that, I was actually at Google running training and enablement there. Went to Salesforce 5 years and went to Box for 5 years after that to build the sales productivity team. I like to call it sales productivity and not enablement. Enablement's a marketing term. We can talk about that all day. Yeah. Anyway, about a year ago, I was approached to make the switch from kind of being an operator to joining the venture capital world. I joined a company called Emergence Capital. We're hyper focused. We're a VC firm in the Valley, located in San Mateo and San Francisco. We're super small, but we're hyper focused on investing in B2B enterprise SaaS companies. So we were the first investors in Salesforce. We invested in Box and Yammer and SuccessFactors, ServiceMax, et cetera. So we've got a really strong track record in the kind of the B2B enterprise SaaS space. My job's a little unique in that while I'm on the investment committee and I'm here to help find kind of new ideas and vet out new ideas and help us determine whether or not we're going to actually invest in the company. But once we do invest, I step in along with an operating partner and a good friend of mine, Viviana Faga. I step in and help them figure out how they're going to scale and grow. How are they going to go from $1 million in revenue to 10 million to 50 million to 100 to public, right? And so, because in most cases, you've got these product-oriented founders that come in and they don't really know how to build a go-to-market strategy. They don't know what they don't know. And, one of the things that we like to offer as a firm is we want to be the most important partner to the most important companies. And so we want to do more than just write a check. And so the best way I can kind of consider myself is I'm like free consulting, if you will, to the founders and CEOs. So we look at a lot of businesses, a lot of different industries. Again, only B2B enterprise SaaS. So it kind of fits my wheelhouse, given my background.
Yeah, and I think that fits the wheelhouse here with the audience too, right? Because
totally.
We were talking before we jumped on here. I think sales in general, I think sales reps are a little bit more entrepreneurial than the average profession, if you will. And I know, so what I really want to kind of hone in on is the leadership, what you look at for in leadership. But I want to back out of that a little bit and come to, being now that, and I'm sure the same thing happens to you, but now being where I am in my career, I got a whole bunch of friends who always come to me with ideas. Hey, John, I got this idea for an app. I got this idea for this. And I'm like,
totally.
Great. And somebody told me this a long time ago, which I now agree with because I see it. Ideas are like assholes, right? Everybody's got them. And they always think, oh, it's just this app. It's just this thing. So first and foremost, how do you know that your idea is good enough to even go ask for money? And then I'm going to preface that with one more thing that Kim and I constantly have a conversation, my wife, Kim, who Doug knows very well, that we constantly have a conversation about, which is East Coast, West Coast. You said West Coast is the best coast, right? Well, there's a different mentality, at least growing up, all right? in the sense that East Coast, like, I don't think half my ideas are worth a shit. And I'm kind of like, well, I got to get them really vetted out before I would even think about going asking anybody for money. Whereas West Coast, it seems like, hey, I'm going to fart in a jar here and I'm going to go get 50 million. So like, what's up? So first of all, help me understand, like, how do you know you have an idea worth going to that next level with? And then, like, why is it worth money compared to every other idiot idea out there that people are spewing on social and all these other things? Help me understand that a little bit.
Totally. Well, that's a big question. So just to give some context, here at Emergence, we only invest in Series A and B stage companies, right? So at that point in time, there are kind of some certain requirements in order to come pitch to us.
Yep.
You're likely going to have $1 million in ARR, if not more. So that means you've kind of identified your product market fit. You've identified the markets that you're going after, and you really want to scale your business, right? That's typically when companies come to us. Sure. Now, for everybody out there that has an idea, you think it's the next best thing, this app that you want to build. That's great. I love that. And don't ever think that anything is possible, because it truly is possible. And you're right, where you are located will kind of dictate, what your options might be. You certainly have a lot more options out here in the Valley because there's just a lot more cash readily available. And the life and kind of the mentality of like, hey, start a company, start a business and go raise money is a lot more, we're just a lot more accustomed to it out here. But that doesn't mean you can't go do that. So here's what I've seen, shall we say. And I did this actually myself back in the early 2000s, actually the late 99, 2000s, right before the big .com crash. I did the same thing. I came up with an idea. I tested it out. We built a product. We got some early beta customers, and then we went out and raised some money from friends and family, right? So typically, in order to get started, you need some level of investment, whether that's your own money or whether that's friends and family money. And that's just kind of build your MVP product. You'll hear that a lot. That's basically to build your product and go test it out in the market. What will typically happen after you raise some friends and family money, or maybe it's your own money, is you'll either maybe you'll join, if it's you and a tech founder, maybe you'll go join Y Combinator or 500 Startups or, a Seller Prize, these little accelerators that will give you resources and help you kind of vet out your product and idea to basically help build the early stages of the company. They'll also give you some funding, right? To kind of get you to that next level. Typically from there, you'll go raise like a seed round of funding, right? And that seed round could be 500 million up to 3-4 million, depending upon your idea, depending upon the market, depending upon how much traction you already have. And so, it takes a little bit of capital in the early days to get started. Now, I have seen some people, because they're programmers, they taught themselves how to program on iOS. They built a mobile app. They use that to get into Y Combinator. They fleshed out their idea even more. They fleshed out the market size and the market opportunity to really understand what they were going after. They went out, raised some seed capital, and then halfway through raising seed capital, they came and started talking to us.
Gotcha.
Right. So we'll see people when they're in the seed stage, because we want to start to build that relationship. Right. They may not be quite ready to raise a Series A, but they know within 6 months they're going to need to start having those conversations, because they're going to probably run out of capital to some degree, or they just really want to accelerate their growth. They're ready to go hire more people. They're really ready to go tackle the market. I'd say there's some certain signals or indicators that you may want to look for. The things that we look for when you get to us, like, what is the market size, right? If some investors are okay if your market size is only $500 million, but just think about that. In order to turn yourself into $1 billion software company or $1 billion shoe company, you need to capitalize on a lot of the market, right? And so that's harder to do. So, it's much better if your total addressable market is like tens of billions of dollars. Like if you're going after the travel industry, I mean, that's like trillions of dollars.
Can I pause there for a second though? So, cause I'm going to relate this to Shark Tank, right? You always see, and they always roll their eyes at the person that comes in and says, look, if I could just get 1% of the market, then I'll be a billionaire. And they all just like, shut the hell up. So like, there's addressable market where you go on Google and say how many people could possibly buy this shit. And then there's the realistic aspect of like, what portion could you? So how do you, because I think a lot of people fool themselves to say, oh my God, there's 8, for me, I'll give you a perfect example. I started Sales from the Streets, this app 5 years ago. And I did some research. I'm like, there's 17 million sales professionals just in the United States alone. So again, if I could just get a fraction of them to get this, it'll go viral and all this other stuff will happen, right? But I think that's dumb math, right? So how do you really understand addressable market so you can, as you walk into it, you're realistic with your addressable market?
Yeah, sure. So you're right. So there's total addressable market, and everyone's going to poke holes in that because it's like, is it really addressable? Can you really sell to everybody in that market? And then there's another acronym that you should make yourself aware of. It's called serviceable addressable market, right? So the reality is when you come to, and I'm going to use software as an example, but in many cases in Shark Tank, it's about a consumer product. Like it's about a new lotion that's like doesn't have chemicals in it or something. That's a little. That kind of market sizing is a lot more difficult than the way we look at the markets, right? So in the B2B market space, it's a lot easier to really identify a real market that you can actually sell to. So there's total addressable market. Then there's serviceable addressable market, right? So maybe you're only selling right now to the SMB size of that market. So that's now half of what the total addressable market is. Right. So let's just recognize the fact that that's really all you can service now. It doesn't mean you can't go upstream, but certain things product needs to be there, the market has to be there, the company needs to be prepared to go up market, right? And so it's important to kind of think about those things. But I'd say more than anything else, you have to identify all the people who have a willingness to buy. Willingness to buy is like the key anchor, if you will, in this process, because it's one thing to come up with a really interesting product or idea. It's another thing to actually say that people are willing to pay for it. Right. And then the question is what are they willing to pay? You think in your mind that they should be willing to pay $35 because that's what it's worth. But the reality is the market's basically saying it's actually only worth $7, right? So it's like, all right, well, your total addressable market in terms of people is tens of billions, but in terms of their willingness to pay and the markets you're going after right now, it's a lot smaller. And so you just have to be really, really clear about, who's my target customer and what is their willingness to pay? And then you got to prove that, right? So prove it with customers and customer attraction. So that's the other thing. We look for market size. We look for market penetration. We look for customer traction. So like how many early stage customers do you have? And are these pilots? Are these like fully engaged customers? Right. And so this is all the stuff that you're testing out in the early days.
Would you say that probably one of the most important things you can do once you come up with an idea is to really hone in on that ideal customer profile?
Yeah, totally. So, the things that I've noticed and what we continue to talk about here is the reason why companies fail. Yep. Two reasons. Number one, focus. Yep. So you try and be all things to everybody. It's like trying to go up market too early. It's like trying to service like a horizontal market in every industry, which we know, healthcare, financial services, government, manufacturing, they all buy differently. Yep. And so it's kind of to your point, being really, really clear about who is my ideal customer profile? Why are they the right fit? What are they willing to pay? And just nail that. You're better off to nail one little market segment and absolutely capitalize on that. And then start to build on, okay, what's level 2? What's level 3? What's level 4 look like? The second reason why companies fail is hiring, right? And it kind of leads us to the leadership conversation that's kind of like the second half of this. But literally hiring the wrong people at the wrong time for where you are in your evolution as an organization is another key reason why companies struggle and fail.
Okay. And it's interesting because, you've obviously been through my training a bunch and the analogy of starting a business and going out for funding is extremely analogous to the analogy of having a product and trying to sell it. Right. I mean, it's the exact same thing. You're trying to sell. Like if I'm coming up with a new company, I'm trying to sell it to you so I can get money from you so that I can take it to the next level. Or if I have a product and I'm trying to go to market, I need to find that. And right now, for instance, with Morgan, we went through that whole ideal customer profile exercise to say, look, where do we fit? I'm trying to educate him because he's pretty new, right? He's 25 years old. I'm trying to say, hey, where do we fit? And I talked to him, for instance, about this inflection point, right? Where, most companies, they do inbound and they do really, really well marketing and that drives their growth originally. And then all of a sudden there's that inflection point where marketing kind of tends to level off and quotas go up, territories get smaller. And all of a sudden now you got to do outbound or you want to move upstream. You want to go mid-market enterprise. Right. That's not inbound, right? So that's outbound. And that point I call the inflection point. And I told him that's where this training is a home run because that's that muscle's different, right? And I'm like, hunt for that. Once you hunt for that, because once you find that, it's almost the sale almost takes care of itself. It's
Yeah,
almost,
for sure.
yeah, okay, this is where it fits. Like, I don't have to convince you of shit. Like, this is exactly what it is. And this is where, this is a square peg into a square hole right here. Right.
Right.
So,
And also at that point in time, you also have a thousand examples of other companies just like them who are going through their exact same experience and how they went through this training, and look what they actually, look at how it turned out for them. Right. And so, yeah, having that ICP is perfect for just repeatability.
well, and then to your point, like then you hyper focus on that. Like this is what I did with you guys with Salesforce, for instance. When I split off with Jay Barrows or Kensei Partners after Basho, I remember vividly being in the room after Basho went belly up, and we had all the logos up there. We had, because we were doing some business with some crazy clients like SAP and Forrester and Gartner and all this other stuff. And the two other trainers who were coming with me, they were fighting over all these big names. And I just remember sitting there looking at Salesforce, because this was 10 years ago. And I'm just like, and I was pretending like I didn't care. I was like, oh, I cared about the other ones. Oh, SAP, I used to train them and blah, blah, blah. And all I gave a shit was Salesforce, because I knew that Salesforce was on this rocket ship, right? And so when I got them as this was my account, I overserviced the shit out of you guys so I could have that name that I could then go tell everybody else about, right? Yep. And that's made my life a lot easier moving forward, obviously.
Yeah. You were hyper-focused. And now you look at all the logos. For Jay Barrows, right? Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box. I mean, there's they all have a very similar look and feel.
Yeah, they really do. So perfect. So we got the ideal customer profile, then over service, and really get a couple of customer wins under your belt to come to funding. And now it comes time to, who do you surround yourself with? Yeah. And from
comes down to hiring.
the hiring, and who do you, because, and also partners too. You decide to go into business. I made my former business partner at Kensei, he was a great guy, but we didn't really sit down and look at each other and said, hey, let's start a business together. We were kind of forced on it. Like we were the two last men standing type of thing, which is, wasn't a great way. It was a great way for us to capitalize on our situation, but not necessarily build a business. So say you're that founder that comes up with a good idea. You're that engineer, you're that dude who taught himself coding. And you kind of have a couple of clients, that type of thing. You go to a Y Combinator or something like that. You get some advice, and now you're you're going to Emergence and saying, okay, I want to go big time on this one. What do you look for? Let's talk about what do you look for in me? Say I come to you, Doug Landis, and say, look, Doug, I got a great idea, and I've got some clients here. Now, how do you know if I'm the guy? First of all,
right.
And then hiring from there, what should I look for in building out my team to be successful?
Totally. So, this is kind of perfectly symbiotic in the conversation, and that focus, right, is one reason why companies fail, and hiring, I would say, is another a big reason why companies fail. And so it's interesting if you were to come to us and say you got $1 million in ARR, you've got a handful of customers that and you can see line of sight to how you can easily get to 5 to 10 million in revenue. And then now the question is, you need capital to help you get there. Right. One of the first things that one of our anchors, as well as market size and market penetration and customer traction, et cetera, is also leadership, right? That's what we also look for when it comes to funding. We look for leadership. Who's on the leadership team and what's their background? Clearly it makes us much more comfortable if you've been there, done that before, because you're aware of the mistakes that you're likely going to face. Or you've already made the mistakes and you've learned from them, and you're likely to make decisions faster and better in this next iteration, this next go around. Now, if this is your first time kind of building a company, then you need to come to the table with something special and unique, whether it's an understanding of the industry that you're going after innately, like you've been servicing this industry and you've been part of the industry, you've been in the function, you've been in the role yourself. And so you really understand the pain points of the industry. You also have massive connections. You know how to speak the language of that industry. Yep. But beyond that, we're also going to look for, well, who else is on the team? And the reality is, you can't get in a Y Combinator or a Seller Prize or anything like that unless there's two of you. You could be the founder idea, the idea guy, but then you're going to need someone technical to actually help you build the product out and help you to go execute against it. And so we're looking at who else is on the team. Who's the technical founder, the technical leader in the organization? What is their aptitude and understanding of the technology and the market that you're serving today? So we'll do a lot of due diligence and background on that. But then we're also going to look at who's your sales leader, who's your marketing leader, do you have a customer success leader? It's interesting, if you're a sales leader and you've got another sales leader and you guys come up with a company and a product, the question is what are going to be your roles
Yeah.
As you gave the example earlier about how you guys all kind of in the early days, before you sold off to Office Depot, we were talking about this, is how like everybody in your organization had distinct capabilities and you guys all fit well together.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, if you look at Box, the 4 founders of Box, it wasn't just Aaron Levy and Dylan Smith. There's actually 4 of them that founded Box. They all still work there because they all found their roles within the company and they've stuck with it for the last 12 years. Yeah. And so the whole idea is like, what's my role in this organization and how can I help this organization scale? Now, mind you, you might also, the other thing you need to be really honest about is what are your strengths, right? So am I the builder? Yeah. Meaning like, am I the guy that can help get us from 0 to 10 million? And then after that, we're going to actually really push to help scale. And that's not really my sweet spot. Or, am I more of like the scaler? Yeah. Like I need all the infrastructure built and put in place. And then I like to come in and actually help to scale the organization. So I think it's really, really important. And I do this exercise with our founders and VP of sales candidates that I often talk to, which is like, tell me what you lean into. So there are basically 4 categories, if you will. There are 4 buckets that every VP of sales needs to excel in. And the reality is you're not going to be a 9 out of 10 in all of these. Yeah. So the question you have to be honest about is which ones do you lean into? And then you also need to make sure that your founder or your boss is really clear about that with themselves. What do they need, right? And I'll tell you, because if you have a really, really analytical and process-oriented founder, and you come in and you're like the culture guy and the deal guy, you guys are going to clash because the founder and CEO is going to want data to back up all of your decisions. They're going to want you to use data to test your hypothesis. They're going to want to see the process that you're putting in place. And you're out there hiring and actually going to do deals, which is helpful, but there may be some inconsistencies in terms of how well you work together. And so it's important to be really thoughtful about what are your strengths and what do you lean into? And then what does the organization need? And even for everybody out there, if you're thinking about kind of your next move, maybe you're VP of sales at a bigger company, you're thinking about going to a startup, it's really, really important to kind of stack rank this. And I just written an article. I'm hoping we're going to get it published in the next couple of weeks. So I'll send it out to everybody, but it'll help you kind of think through what's important. The other thing is you also have to understand, like, we're going to vet you out, right? So like, let's say you're part of the founding team. Yeah. We're going to, part of our job is to vet out everybody on the founding team and go, all right, well, is this the team that can take this to $1 billion? Yeah. And in many cases, the answer is no. But we still may invest. Right? We may invest and say, okay, this is the team that's going to get us to 10 million or to 20 million, but we know we're going to have to keep our eyes on these couple folks because I don't know if they're going to be the people that are going to get us to 100 million or $1 billion, right? Yeah. And that's okay. I'm going to use Jim Herbold as an example. Jim Herbold's easily one of the best salespeople I've ever seen, best sales leaders. He's like a mentor of mine. He's a very good friend. He's the former VP of sales at Box, but he took them from 1 million or 0 basically to 100 million. And then when they got to it, which is insanely difficult. Yeah. And when we got to 100 million, Jim was like, you know what? This is not my sweet spot anymore. I don't really, we need somebody bigger. That's not my jam. My jam is in the weeds, in the process, in with the reps, building kind of the foundations and the infrastructure. And I'm not the 100 million plus guy, right? And so he knew for himself, like, time for me to bow out, time for us to bring somebody else in, and I'm going to go back to building. And now I consult with organizations. Look him up, Jim Herbold, if you need help.
Let me ask you, how frequent is it where they recognize that versus it has to be recognized for them? And I'll give you some context here. That happened to me, right? So we started Thrive. I've always said I'm not the original startup guy because I'm not like the ultimate risk taker in the sense that there has to be some pieces in place for me to take that risk, right? I'm a calculated risk taker, but for me, I wasn't the original founder. I didn't live in my parents' basement and eat ramen noodles, right? By the time Thrive kind of my first startup got to the point where it was, they could pay me at least a little bit of a salary and there was a commission, there was some structure to it, but I was the accelerator guy. I was the second in command guy. Like, you bring me on board and I will turn the fucking volume up here and I'll live in chaos. I'll build structure. But then when we got acquired by Staples, I remember the guy who was acquiring us sat and interviewed all the managers, and I was 28 years old, and we had a consultant come in and tell us, hey, this is probably what they're going to ask. This is the way you should phrase your answers. And you know me, man, I suck at lying, right? I'm about as transparent as it gets. So when he interviewed me, I was company guy. You know, I was like, well, yeah, I'm super fired up about this. This is fantastic. And, you know, in the back of my head, I'm going, you guys are going to annihilate us. You're just going to fire us all in 6 months. It's going to be a disaster. So I obviously I didn't come across well. And that guy's original perception of me was negative. And he actually looked at the whole founders. And out of all the founders, he said, I was the one he had the biggest problem with to my CEO. And my CEO was floored because he was like, are you shitting me? Like John's like, he started this, he bleeds blue. Like I was the rah guy every month standing up there, giving the, hey, go team, we can do this, right? The culture guy and the hard driver. And he recognized early that I wasn't the guy. And, you know, now, mind you, I think if I was open with him, it would have been a much different conversation. But, and I think we would have connected much better. But the problem was he was right. I didn't see it because you know why? I'm not a corporate guy. Like I have zero filter. I fucking cannot stand playing politics. You know what I mean? So like the whole inner workings of an organization and kissing somebody's ass, like that's just not me. Right. And so being my little $10 million company being absorbed by this $20 billion organization, I was definitely not the guy, but it took them to fire me effectively to figure that out. So how often do you see somebody recognizing, like you said with Jim, he kind of got to 100 million and was like, you know what, this ain't my game anymore, versus somebody being like, dude, this isn't your game anymore.
Yeah. I would say it's more common for somebody on the outside to actually make that call than for most people internally to make that call. Again, which is why I challenge everybody to be really thoughtful about what am I really good at? Am I good at the 0 to 10 million? Am I good at the 10 to 20 million? Am I good at the 20 to 100 million? Where's my sweet spot? Where do I like? That doesn't mean you shouldn't go challenge yourself.
Sure.
And say, well, look, I'm really good at the 0 to 10 million, but I really want to get better at the 10 to 100 million.
Yep.
That's cool. But just be really, really honest about it. Kind of like to your point, John, if you had been more transparent with yourself and with them, it would have made the whole conversation a lot easier because I know you're not good in a $20 billion company. That's just, I mean, I'm sure the guy probably saw right through it. Was like, okay, yeah, this is not the guy. And you know, the reality is it's much more frequent to happen on the outside. Somebody looking at somebody like, you know, an investment firm or a VC firm that's looking at the leadership team, because we'll go through and we'll do our due diligence on every single person that's part of the leadership team. And, you know, like, for example, I'll look at the sales processes and I'll look at the sales leadership and I'll dig into the data and the numbers. And I will ask questions to understand how you built out your business. And as a result, I can tell pretty quickly as to whether or not you're the guy. Like, are you the guy or not the guy? And it's okay if you're not the person. Maybe it just means like in 6 months or to a year, we need to hire somebody above you to help strengthen you. That's okay. You shouldn't feel, you shouldn't feel bad about it because like you've done a great job getting us to this point, but we need to elevate this in order to really accelerate. And so a big part of it's just being honest, but also recognize the fact people on the outside will have a different perspective when they look in.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're finishing up here. I know you have a hard stop at 1 o'clock and so do I, but just from takeaway standpoint, you know, ideas, focus on that ideal customer profile, really hone in on that, get a couple of traction, you know, over service existing customers, know your skill sets and what you're good at, surround yourself with people with other skill sets, and then be honest with yourself as far as, you know, to your point, I like that, you know, what gets you to lean in? What stuff do you really like versus the stuff that you kind of have to do just because you're the founder or whatever it is, right?
Totally. Are you a process guy or are you a deal guy? Are you a data guy or are you a culture guy, right? And then again, remember, if you're building a company, at the end of the day, it's all about a willingness to pay. Who's actually willing to pay for your product and at what price? And that's kind of how you continue to build out this kind of MVP that you're building in the early days.
I love it. And there's a question on the Facebook that we'll get to later, but I think we could spend a whole nother half hour on this one, which is how did you identify real prospects from freemium users at Box, right? So it's like, because you could come up with an idea to the point of not pay, like, okay, you get a whole bunch of people who will use it, but won't pay for it. Yeah. So how do you know now you have something? So that's another discussion. Maybe we could just get that out, you know, on the Facebook page.
For sure. I'll say one thing about freemium. I hate it. Here's why.
Yeah.
It's great for raising brand awareness. It's terrible for actually generating customers, right? If you think about it, because everybody that signs up for freemium signs up with a Hotmail or a Yahoo or a Gmail account. Yep. And how the hell do you know what business they're associated with, right? And to get somebody from a free user over to a full business, full paid customer is really difficult and takes a lot of effort. Now, there's certain indicators that you can look for, but freemium can also be really expensive. I can tell you at Box, We spent millions of dollars supporting all of our free users because they were loading just like thousands and thousands of gigs of files in the box because it's a free account, right? Yep. But yet, how many of those did we actually convert to real business customers? Not a whole lot. So freemium is difficult. It's expensive. It's great for brand awareness to just be really, really clear about what you're using freemium for. Yeah. Don't, set your expectations properly, I guess is the best way to think about it.
Yeah, it's like all those people that came up with an app and they're, I got 20,000 people who download it. Oh, good job. Okay, so
yeah, how many people pay for it?
No. Yeah. Okay. Click the button and see how many people actually pay for whatever you're going to push in front of them next, and then come and talk to me, right?
Totally.
Awesome, Doug. Well, look, I know you're out there, you're doing a lot of blogging and just really just being a great evangelist in general for sales and starting businesses and doing things the right way. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they follow you?
So jump on LinkedIn. I'm just Doug Landis at Emergence Capital. I'm also Doug at MCAP. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm also on Twitter at Doug Landis. And if you have any business ideas, run them by me. Of course, want to make sure you have some traction. If this is a brand new business idea,
love that.
Seed funding first.
Nancy had one last question, which is, do you work with just tech companies or would you help out nonprofit ideas of other industries?
We only service for-profit businesses. Yep. I'll help out nonprofit ideas. So just shoot me an email at Doug at MCAP and we can have a conversation.
Awesome, Doug. Well, pleasure as always. Hopefully I'll see you another time where we can grab some drinks and catch up on it. So
Well, I see you at SaaStr or Revenue Summit or Rainmaker. Where am I going to see you?
Yes. Everywhere. Right? Actually, not SaaStr. Cool. I'm not going up to SaaStr this year.
I hope to see everybody else that's listening at one of those conferences. I will be there.
All right, brother. Make it a great day. All right. Thanks again.
All right. See you, bye.